This is Mr. H, Chapter 1, Lesson 4, Part 1. This is a two-part lesson because it's decimals to fractions, and then the second part is fractions to decimals. But since we're talking about Part 1, we're going to be working on decimals to fractions. So taking a decimal and turning it into a fraction. And now we're dealing with rational numbers, guys. So far, we've been talking about whole numbers, integers, and now we're talking about rational numbers, which are decimals and fractions. So you got this number right here, 0.4. I'm not saying it correctly, but that's because I want to see if you can say it correctly. All right. So step 1 is being able to read the decimal and knowing your place value. So I read it as 0.4. But if I know my place value, I would read it as 0 and 4/10. Did you know that? Hopefully you did. If you did, this is going to be an easy lesson. If you didn't, I'm teaching you place value again, because this is something that was taught to you, I think, back in 4th grade. Briefly went over it in 3rd grade, but I know for sure they talk about this very heavily in 4th. All right, so once you go to the right of the decimal, you got tenths, you got hundreds, and you got thousands. All right. The reason why I put a 10 under the tenths, that's because when we're talking about tenths place, that's your denominator pretty much. It'll be a 10. Hundredths place, it'll be 100. Thousandths place, it'll be 1,000. So step 1 is read the decimal and know your place value. All right. Step 2 is going to be determine your numerator, which comes from your decimal number, and determine your denominator, which comes from the place value. So 0 and 4/10. 0 and 4/10. Make sure you read it correctly as 0 and 4/10. You can think of the decimal as the and. All right. You don't have to read it as 0 and 4/10 because 0 is nothing, right? So you could technically read it as 4/10. So your 4 is your numerator because that's your decimal number. And your place value is tenths, is a 10 because it's in the tenths place. All right, this is not how you write the actual fraction. Do not write it with a decimal, okay? Step 3 is you have to remove that decimal and then write it as a fraction. So we simply write it as 4/10, and you read that fraction as 4/10. The same way you read the decimal. It's easy. All right, and then the last step is reduce and simplify. This is a skill that I know for sure you were taught in 5th grade. All right, so a 4 is an even number and a 10 is an even number, so I love to always start dividing those by 2. 4 divided by 2 gives you 2. 10 divided by 2 gives you 5. So 4/10 simplified is 2/5. See that? And they're also equal. 4/10 is equal to 2/5 is equal to 0.4, or 0 and 4/10. All right, let's look at this example. Step 1. Make sure you know your place value. And make sure you read it. All right. So that's 0 and 45 hundredths. 45 is your numerator, right? And the hundredths makes your denominator a 100. So here's a little trick. If that number, your numerator ends with a 5 and your denominator ends with a 0, they're divisible by 5. All right. So 45 divided by 5 is 9. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 45 hundredths gets simplified to 9/20ths. Now, how do you know this is the most simplified fraction of 45 hundredths? Well, you got to make sure they don't share any factors, right? So 9 has the factors of 3 times 3, and 20 has the factors of 4 and 5, because 4 times 5 gives you 20. So that's how you know you can't simplify that fraction anymore. All right, example B, you got 2 and 12 hundredths. 2 and 12 hundredths. Leave the 2 alone, all right? Don't mess with that. We're only concerned of what's after the decimal, to the right. So 12 hundredths, your 12 is your numerator, 100 is your denominator because it ended in the hundredths place. They're even, so they're divisible by 2. Again, make sure you leave the 2 alone, bring it with you. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Those are still even. We can divide them again by 2. See that? 6 divided by 2 is... Oh, don't forget to bring that 2 with you, the whole number. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 50 divided by 2 is 25. And that's the simplified fraction or rational number. 4, 2, and 12 hundredths gets reduced to 2 and 3/25ths. Example C, read it. 0 and 15 hundredths, or just 15 hundredths. So your numerator is 15, your denominator is 100. They end with 5 and 0. They're divisible by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And you cannot reduce that anymore. Guys, stay sharp. Study, study, study. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. You can do this. See you next time.